Joining us now on this story is Dan Perry. He's a world affairs analyst. He joins us live from Tel Aviv. Dan, thank you very much. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you here on the broadcast. Two contrasting updates there, and it all boils down to one thing: Iran's nuclear program. It seems like both of these sides are stuck once again. It looked like perhaps Iran would be allowed some nuclear enrichment. However, this statement coming out of Israel says otherwise. In terms of Iran's nuclear program, does the United States and Israel have the leverage to ask for absolutely none of it, and also the removal of the materials already inside Iran, about 440 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%. What are your thoughts?
Very, very sadly, it looks like the United States, Israel, and the rest of the world have little leverage at all on Iranians, because the Iranians have discovered in the course of the war the value of the asymmetric warfare in blocking the Strait of Hormuz and causing the world economy damage. Perhaps under a different reality, where Trump had not so broken with his European allies and Iran would have been facing the entirety of NATO, and not just the US and Israel, they might have been more easily chastened, but maybe even not then. I think the Iranians feel like their very survival constitutes victory. I think they feel like basically the world will now cower in terror before their possible re-closing of the Strait of Hormuz. There is some strength from their perspective in the fact that they don't care at all about their own population and their own military installations, and none of the practical concerns that would affect a normative government, a democratic government, apply in Iran. They don't care at all about the damage that the U.S. and Israel, or for that matter, other countries, if they joined, could do to Iran, whose skies are totally exposed and whose military is devastated. Because as long as they can fire a few missiles or drones at ships, this has such a horrible effect on the world economy, creating shortages of petrol and petroleum products and fertilizer and even helium that they figure basically it's a tremendous blackmail tool. So barring a resumption of the war, but this time under different terms, completely open-ended, and without limitations on what exactly can be hit, so they hit the oil infrastructure as well. Barring that, which I don't think the Americans want to do, not a lot of leverage at all.
Indeed.
Think about Trump.
And Dan, apologies. In terms of the two men leading that coalition, Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu and Mr. Donald Trump, those two men have elections coming up later on this year. How much is that time constraint and how much is that time pressure really weighing in on these negotiations, and the difference between Donald Trump and the situation he is facing from his domestic pressure and the different type of pressure that Netanyahu is facing from the people in Israel?
Great questions, Thomas. And you're right to imply that it goes in opposite directions. Certainly it's an issue. They're assuming that in the case of Trump, he's not going to want the war to go on long enough to be fresh in the memories of people, or it's still kinetic, during the midterms, which are in November, because that would hurt the Republicans. And if the Republicans lose the House and the Senate, Trump is in big trouble. He becomes a complete lame duck. He's going to face not just impeachment proceedings and investigations of every kind, but a complete blockage to any of his policies, which would probably please most American citizens, but not Trump. So if the Iranians figure that the most Trump can do is go another 6 weeks, 4, 8 maybe, then they'll play for time. And they'll assume they can wait out the war no matter what the damage and no matter how many people are killed. And indeed, if a lot of civilians end up being killed in such a war, they will use it to besmirch America, certainly Israel, to claim they had been victimized. And they want that. Like Hamas in Gaza, they want civilian casualties. It's insane. But people who don't know this is true don't know who they're dealing with. So in a case of Trump, he can't have a prolonged war without suffering tremendous damage. But no matter what happens to him, he still stays in power probably until 2028. For Netanyahu, it's the opposite calculation. Netanyahu faces elections not for his party, a la the midterm elections in the US, but for himself. I mean, if he loses those elections, he's gone as prime minister.
Mm.
And currently, all polls show he's going to lose, and he's going to lose badly. So Netanyahu only has a few potential tricks up his sleeve to somehow avoid being turfed out. And one of them would be a huge success, the kind that has eluded him so far in the efforts against Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, or B, a national emergency so cataclysmic that he can somehow put off the elections. And again, anyone who thinks that it is naive to consider such a thing doesn't know who we're dealing with. So, for different reasons and different directions, yeah, those elections are a factor.
Dan, in terms of this conflict and the sheer devastation that it is causing in southern Lebanon, do we have anything in when it comes to how much closer Hezbollah is to being defeated? We are consistently delivered these updates on a daily basis about civilians being killed. I just want to reiterate that these figures, they don't distinguish between combatants and civilians in all cases. So, in terms of the front in Lebanon, how do you assess its progress at the moment?
I don't think it's going very well. We don't know what degree the casualties are militants, and Israel would argue probably that most of them are. But we have seen convincing evidence of civilian casualties, and each case of it causes Israel further reputational damage, further degradation of its international standing. And I have to ask for one, because this policy of mowing the lawn in Lebanon, as in Gaza, isn't achieving the aim of dismantling Hezbollah. I mean, many good people in the government of Lebanon wish it would, even as they complain about the damage being caused by Israel. In the end, Israel and the government of Lebanon are on the same side. Both want to degrade Hezbollah, to disarm Hezbollah. As UN Security Council resolutions, several of them have been demanding for 20 years and more, because Hezbollah is a complete affront to the sovereignty of Lebanon, running a military that's stronger than the Lebanese militaries. Now, Lebanon has undertaken to disarm Hezbollah a year and a half ago already. They have failed because they're too weak. And, you know, Israeli strikes against Hezbollah, I think, are totally defensible on one level, because Hezbollah should be eradicated. But are they achieving the ends? I'm not so sure. I would like to see Israel take more of a diplomatic initiative and basically enter a new phase where they publicly and creatively seek to offer the government of Lebanon whatever help the government of Lebanon might want. They have undertaken to disarm Hezbollah. The president of Lebanon has called Hezbollah traitors. Israel should encourage Lebanon to ask for the help of the world in sending a force, be it an Arab force or a Western force or a NATO force, to help the Lebanese army actually do this. They may not have to fight because Hezbollah is encircled completely. And if they understood that the entire world is going to join in an assault against them, including the Arab League, which has also called for the disarmament of Hezbollah, that might put things on a different path, and maybe then they would be more amenable to diplomatic efforts to have them voluntarily hand over their weapons. But just Israel doing it without coordinating with Lebanon, I think, has diminishing returns, to say the least.
And Dan, we talk about disarming Hezbollah. Of course, that is the end game. But of course, the same goal is with Hamas as well. That hasn't occurred. We've seen continued strikes in Gaza post-ceasefire, like we're seeing in Lebanon. This strategy of, as you said, raising infrastructure, towns, villages, in the case of southern Lebanon, clearly isn't getting these groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, to lay down their weapons. Why does Israel continue with that same strategy, and why does it see it as effective, even after 2 years of war in Gaza, and 80% of the infrastructure destroyed, where it wasn't achieved? Why does it continue that same strategy in southern Lebanon?
I don't know. And Israel's military has made clear already for over a year that they think there's not much more militarily that they can do in Gaza. In Lebanon, kind of repeating the same mistake, although it's different because what happened in Lebanon is that Hezbollah fled to the north of the country. Israel doesn't want to go that far up north. They'd be accused of occupying most of Lebanon. So they're fighting from the air. They're trying to create a Hezbollah-free buffer zone in the south. That's not unattainable. But even if they did, it would bring upon them accusations of territorial expansionism. It would cause harm to the civilian population in those areas, and still they would face rocket attacks from the north because these are fairly long-range rockets. So I just think a completely different strategy is needed in both cases. I know that the Israeli security establishment would agree, but the government of Israel is, I think, about as wise as the government that currently is in power in Washington.
Dan Perry, as always, thank you so much for speaking to us. It's always a great pleasure to speak to you and hear what you have to say. Thank you very much for your time.